Hello! Welcome to this video. I am so glad that you're here and I'm so excited to share this video with you today. My name is Ella Fields. I'm a filmmaker and artist in Los Angeles. I've been making films of some sort almost my entire life. I've made almost 30 films by this point right now and I'm 17 years old. I love using surrealistic elements and creating fantastical worlds in order to most accurately tell stories that are important to hear. I've had some of my films in festivals around the world where they've won awards and I've gotten some recognition. This is so funny talking about myself like this. But the point is, I've been making films for a while and I have been making films on very low budgets and with very small crews. I really see film as a cathartic form of expression. I think that film and the format of video has the capacity to be an entire jumble of like all kinds of art and just be so impactful. It's so important that every story is told and that everyone has the opportunity to see a portrayal of yourself or an emotion that you felt that maybe you were ashamed of feeling on the screen. It's possible to make a film with very little resources these days with technology, and it's possible to share these films and to make a difference. My film Stereo on reverse gender stereotypes just reached 10 million views on YouTube, and I made that film when I was 13 years old with like one camera and just my friends and my sister. My sister starred in it. By no means am I like in the film industry or would consider myself like a professional filmmaker. I feel very in touch with like the artistic side of it and the ability to use story and film as a really powerful form of expression. So I'm here today to share some questions that you had. I posted like a Q&A little box, one of those like question box things. I feel like a grandma a lot of the time. I am doing a Q&A about film and things you can do in order to make films. I'll cover some of the creative process and like little tips you can use to spark inspiration, going over a little bit of how I started making films and the equipment I use and the equipment you can use, how to cast people, how to make connections, how to construct a story, and then also just how to overcome any doubts about yourself that may be a package with being a young filmmaker. But really I think that being young is the perfect time to experiment and it's the perfect time to assert your voice. There are tools to do so and there are ways to do so. And I don't ever think that being young should be an excuse to not make a movie. I think that movies made by young people are the most accurate portrayals of young people. And I think that we all just have such powerful voices and it's just about finding the right medium and the right way to use it. So hopefully my tips will somehow be helpful with you trying out the medium of film. So it might be a bit long. I'm gonna try and like break it up into segments so you can watch what you're interested in. Let's get into the video. So the first question is, how do you come up with ideas for your videos? Paying attention to everything, the little details of things around me, as well as my own emotions, topics or themes, questions that get me really excited and make me want to make something, or moments in my life and kind of roadblocks that feel stuck emotionally that maybe like I haven't quite healed from or I haven't quite moved past. Paying attention to yourself and your experience with life, but also paying attention to the media, the stories that you feel like are lacking or the things you wish you could see. If you're able to pinpoint and acknowledge these things that you want to say, because we all have things to say, we all have such different experiences and we all have opinions. And I think that forming opinions, especially with so much information all at once, can be really tricky. Forming opinions comes with paying attention to your emotions, and then once you're able to identify what it is that you want to see, you have the ability to tell that story. So some specific techniques that I use when going through writer's block or just trying to get more inspiration, I'll go on a walk and I'll purposely pay attention to everything. Paying attention to people and the way that they dress and what that says about them. Or just wondering things, wondering who nailed that street sign into the ground or who mowed that lawn and what is their story. It's just paying attention to the little things and just wondering about them. A lot of times I'll kind of have this train of thought but I'll just forget it. So another thing that I do is I'll just press record on the voice memos of my phone and just talk, make it like a super stream of consciousness, talking, saying whatever comes to mind. It's just a nice way to get your brain flowing. So either that or I'll watch movies and I'll pay attention to themes within these movies, or lines of dialogue that I really resonate with, and just keeping note of these things as little tiny nuggets of inspiration. And then once you kind of have them all in front of you, usually one of them will jump out as something that I want to explore more, blossoming some kind of story or a project or something from these little itty bitty sparks. I find that I feel the sparks a lot. It definitely takes work to actually bring that little nugget of inspiration into fruition. That takes technique, but the only way to get better at it is just to do it and to try and to fail. Making something from your heart and from the source of where you feel inspired will never go wrong as long as you explore it. So the next question is, what is your creative process like? I always have difficulty answering this question because for film specifically, there is so much that goes into a film. Throughout my teenage years, I have not worked with that big of a crew, so I don't think you need a big crew or a big bunch of people to make a film. I've kind of had experience with most departments of what goes into production, pre-production, post-production. Usually, when coming up with ideas, pick one, only one, it's difficult. Then I'll open a Google Doc or a journal and just jot down everything that I can think. Characters and setting, what the time of day would say about these characters and what are their wants and what are their needs and what are their flaws. What way do I want them to grow or change throughout the story? There's so many little elements that go into making the story rich and three-dimensional. So I'll just kind of flush all of these little elements out. Just type a paragraph, like picturing the movie in my head and just writing out the things that I see. Get it kind of all out of my brain onto the paper or computer screen. From there, I will transfer it to a screenplay. I use a program called CellText to write my screenplays, and it's super awesome because it formats it all for you. It's kind of the same thing with this screenplay where it's literally blank page syndrome all over again. Even though you have it all fleshed out, like actually transferring it into a screenplay is like not an easy thing to do. For me, I just have to start, because I could sit there and think about it for like days. You kind of just have to start typing at some point and know that it's gonna go through like so many drafts after that. I feel like most of the creativity comes in pre-production, figuring out the little nuances, like where am I gonna shoot? What is my set gonna look like? What do I want my characters to wear? When I play out the scene in my head, I try and envision everything that I will need. I make a list of props. Wardrobe, if I have someone working on wardrobe, I'll send them like little inspo pics from Pinterest and then get their input, and then we can go to a thrift shop. Or production design. What would your character's bedroom look like? What posters would they have on their wall? Once you start shooting, it's crunch mode. You have to be super prepared when going on to set because usually you're running on money and time and the attention span of your actors and your crew. It's the adrenaline, but the best kind of adrenaline you could ever feel. If you're someone who likes production and likes working with people and collaborating and bouncing off ideas, it really is magic. Like when people say movie magic, you're watching what once was just a nugget of inspiration flourish, and you're watching people perform these lines that were just a dialogue with yourself in your mind. A lot of it is problem solving, and that can definitely be stressful because things usually do not go how you plan. If you're with the right people and you're in the right mindset, you know, you problem solve, and a lot of times there will be happy accidents. Things will turn out better than you imagined, and I think that's part of where the magic comes from. So you shoot the movie. There's so much more that goes into this, but I guess this is the nutshell version. After that, I always edit my own films too, so I'll usually come home right away and start editing right away because I'm just so excited to see all the footage. I'll watch it, I'll log it, so I'll title each of the shots and each of the scenes and kind of organize it all on my computer. I edit in Adobe Premiere Pro, and I cut it all together in like a rough cut, and usually cry about it because if you're happy with your rough cut, there's probably something wrong. Genuinely, I don't think anyone is like ecstatic to see their rough cut. When you see it in your head, it's like the final idea, and then you see the rough cut and it's like, but it will get there if you keep working at it. At that point, it's just a matter of like nitpicking and adding things and having like 7 different final versions, like exporting it and being like, this is the final, and then final 2, final 3. You could work on something for years and just keep finding things wrong with it, but at some point when I feel like somewhat satisfied with it, I just have to be done. At that point, I'll put it out into the world, whether that's on YouTube or in film festivals. The next question is, how did you start and what made you want to start making short films? So I was my dad gave me a tiny little cheap camcorder when I was like 6 years old. We lived in this house that we called the tree house because it was kind of in nature, like there were hikes all around us and there was a bridge in the backyard and a hill. It was a tiny house, like 2-room, like it was itty bitty, so we spent so much time outside. This camera, my little sister and I would just make things and I would film things and we would just let our imaginations like take us wherever they went and we would document it on this camera. That form of expression through video stuck with me. My parents are very supportive of me being an artist. I don't think that's necessary to have, but it definitely helps. We found this middle school that had a film program. So I went to that middle school where I learned more of the nuances of how to edit and how to tell a story and what each camera angle is, like what is a close-up, what is an extreme close-up, what is a mid-shot. That was really informative, and I was making projects for homework assignments and I was just making things and I was shooting with my iPhone. There's so much to learn online and there's so many videos like these that can be informative. You can make your own film curriculum if you're really motivated to do so. So the next question is, what is your first film? I feel like there's different layers of the first film. Like there's the one that I made when I was 6 with a stuffed animal dog called Fire, who was a fire dog, and then his family wasn't supportive of him being a fire dog. And then there was like a scene where my sister was the vet and then she was like on the phone and then she was like, then the dog like was being birthed. What I consider my first film was my first film in middle school in that film program. It was called Be Grateful. It's still up on YouTube. You can watch it wherever I'm able to put a link. It was a camera angles assignment, so on the bottom it's like close-up, medium close-up, extreme wide shot. So next question is, what equipment do you use? I have a Canon 5D, which is what I'm shooting with now. I shoot all my movies with it. I have a Rode mic, which it's like, I'm using that now too. It screws onto the top of the camera. I have a 50mm lens, 105mm lens, which is what I'm using now. That's a wider lens. 50mm is not as wide of a lens, but it has a more shallow depth of field. So that means that it blurs the background. So that's good for like headshots or portraits or close-ups. And then this one's good for like a wider view of the background and my room. I have 2 softbox lights, which I'm not using now because I have the lovely sun. I have a tripod, which is, oh boy, Ultra Pro, a reflector, a Super 8 camera, which I don't use all the time because it costs like extra to get film developed. I make all my films basically with this equipment. The next question is, how can I make a movie with little to no equipment? Like I was saying before, an iPhone has such a good camera. If you have a phone, there's a camera. The next step up from that would probably be a DSLR camera of some type. I like Canon. I've always had Canon. Also, sound is very important. I forget where I heard this. Someone important said it, but the biggest differentiation between student films and professional work is the sound. Generally, student films don't have a budget to spend on getting good sound, but sound is more important than visuals most of the time. A good way to start is music videos. I made so many music videos right when I started just because you don't have to worry about sound or dialogue. You can just focus on defining your visual aesthetic. I always used other people's songs like Melanie Martinez. It doesn't even have to be like a music video, just having a song play throughout your film. That's definitely a good way to start. Film is definitely one of the most expensive mediums, so it can be tricky to feel like you can do it when you don't really have any sort of equipment, but you can. There's so much you can do with only an iPhone and iMovie. There's so many stories you can still tell and so many things you can document and so many ways you can share it. Not having equipment should not be an excuse to not make a film, or to at least like dip your toe into the medium and just try and make something. The next question is, how do you make connections as a filmmaker? I think that film school is a great way to make connections. Obviously not everybody has access to go to a film school. If you do, I think it's a really great thing to involve yourself in. Not everybody is going to want to be a director or to write and direct their own films. You'll have people who have an interest in production design or sound design or editing. Collaborating with these people gets a lot more hands on your work and takes a lot of the pressure off your shoulders. So film school, helpful for connections. Instagram, oh my goodness, let me just say, can be terrible, toxic. draining. But there are so many pros to Instagram and to social media. I'm still trying to find my balance between literally just wanting to like throw my phone in the ocean and delete all social media. But then also the amount of people that I've met and connections I've made through social media is like mind-blowing to me that that is even possible. Spend your social media screen time to fall into a deep hole of like looking for cool art and cool artists. Follow them and DM them and tell them that you're an artist too and you really enjoy their work and like you'd love to collab together at some point. As an introvert, the notion of the most important thing about making films is connections scares the bejeezers out of me. Bejeezers, I don't know if that's a word, but you get the point. I just try and see it as like a fun kind of game, a fun kind of challenge. The adrenaline that I feel before messaging somebody could result in a really beautiful collaboration. Ask people to be a part of your stuff and then offer to be a part of their stuff, or come up with ideas of something you can create together with both of your mediums or both of your styles of art. The best way to like build your mafia of people that you can count on and who you can work with is to create with people. Next question is similar to that. How do you get these people to be interested in being a part of your film? So number one is that you have to believe that the thing that you're making is the most important thing. People love to see passion. If someone sees that you're like over the moon passionate about this project, they'll definitely be more inclined to want to be a part of it and to feel that passion as well. Of course, it's always nice to be paid, but when you're on a budget, you can't always pay your crew or your actors. It's just really important to be respectful of their time and the energy that they're putting into it. I always like to get people little gifts. A couple bucks at like Dollar Tree, you could get a really nice pack of stickers or a candle, you know? It's just really nice to be respectful of people and their time, especially if you're not paying them. Also, it really helps if you have work under your belt that you can say, hey, I'm making this film, I want you to be a part of it. Here's some of my previous work. If you like it, let me know. We can like work on something together. It can be difficult to build up your reel because I think that it takes a lot of terrible films to make a decent one. Not everything you make is gonna be impactful and amazing. And that's okay because we have to have those moments of failure in order to learn, and we need to try new things, and those things will often not really work out, and then we know not to do them again. Really just a battle of trial and error, and then maybe eventually the stars will align. Also with your specific projects, it's also important to show that you're prepared, whether that's having a Pinterest mood board to send to them, or a PowerPoint with the film's logline and tagline and inspo photos, showing them that you know what you're doing, even if you don't know what you're doing. I'm pretty sure everybody has this, but I have really terrible imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm a fake. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody should trust me. But you just have to pretend that you do know what you're doing. And just remember that nobody really knows what they're doing. Especially with film, there's never like a set path that if you do this step and this step and this step, you'll make it. The journey is just like, it is not linear at all. So embrace the fact that you don't know what you're doing and that you're learning, but that you're doing your best. Putting effort into showing people that you're passionate about it and that you're prepared and you're ready to like conquer, you know? The next question is, how do you cast actors when you don't have actor friends? You can do casting calls on Instagram. That is how I met Eleanor, who is the protagonist in Bubblegum. Also, there's this website called Backstage. I used it to find the actors for my film The Green Ribbon. Middle-aged Jenny and Alfred I both found on Backstage. And it's usually full of actors who are looking to build their resume. There's definitely people who are willing to do projects for little to no pay. And it's really simple to do. You just post a casting call and then you have people send in self-tape auditions. You choose who you like, and then you can communicate and schedule from there. So the next question is, how do you deal with handling sensitive topics like sexual assault or gun control? Potential trigger warning for this segment. So I think there are some topics that must be approached with sensitivity, like sexual assault, for example. With my film Bloom, people who are going through similar emotions that I did, I wanted to give them what I wish that I had. When you're dealing with something like sexual assault, I think that every word can make a difference. You could hear someone say something about your story once and it could stick with you for the rest of your life. So with that topic, I definitely had to be sensitive because it was something I had gone through. I think it made it a little easier, like, oh, would I want to hear this? Is this something that would benefit me from hearing? Also, research. I'm not a professional like therapist or psychologist or anything. There's a lot of resources online on how to approach topics like sexual assault. I found a list of things never to say to a sexual assault survivor, and I integrated those in my film. Doing research and getting all sides of it will help you form your opinion and find out how you want to approach it. That's definitely something I wanted to approach with sensitivity. However, I think a big part of activism through film is to be assertive, define your opinion, and scream it to the world. What I can think about this, for example, was my film Voices on gun reform. That was something where I had an opinion and I had all of these Generation Z fellow people being interviewed for it, and everybody had a lot to say. And had I been like, oh, but people aren't going to agree with this, like, it's a touchy topic, I don't think that the film would have worked. I think with something like that, it's really not about being sensitive, but being bold and intentional. It definitely takes a lot of reflection on your own opinions and the impact that you want your film to have. So the next question is, how do you get motivation to work towards your goals in filmmaking? So this is something that goes through waves. I went through a phase about a year ago where I was really questioning my passion for making films. I didn't know how to say no, so I would just kind of commit to these projects that I had to put so much effort into that I just didn't really feel passionate about. So that was a factor. I just felt pretty burned out. It's like a midlife crisis at 16 years old. But the thing that got me back into it was actually making other things and trying other forms of art. I think I just kind of lost my artistic voice in general. And quarantine hit and I started painting and I started making music and I started making puppets. And all of these things that weren't necessarily film, yet doing these things like proved my passion for film. Watching movies that I liked, because it wasn't that I never enjoyed movies, but just most of the movies that I was supposed to like as a filmmaker, I just like didn't. I was like ashamed to not, so I would just watch them anyway and be like, yeah, like Clockwork Orange. I'm not hating on these movies, like if you like these movies, like awesome. But then a huge part reclaiming my passion for film was that I found movies that I actually really liked, were innovative and sensitive, and quite frankly, I just didn't even look to see if there were movies out there that would feel closer to the kinds of movies that I wanted to make. If you're losing motivation, I think it's a tricky tightrope to be walking on, whether or not you're just going through a phase of not feeling motivated or working on the wrong things, or if you need to search for something else. I went on that search. I tried all these other things, and it only proved to me that film was what I was most passionate about. Don't wait for permission to pick up a new hobby or to try something new. The next question is, how do you overcome adults or other people not taking you seriously? Honestly, the best way to do that is to prove them wrong. Prove that you have a voice, you can make something that's super awesome, you can put effort into it. People always ask me this because my film Stereo got a lot of recognition and I was 13 years old. Stereo, it's a rough film. Like, it's not professional or like really polished. It's not anything grand by any means. But I think the thing that made people notice it was the fact that I made it when I was 13 years old. You do have a voice. You have a loud voice with that. All of the resources of YouTube and social media. The best way to overcome these people who are doubting you is just to show them that their doubts are baseless. Like, not having in mind like, oh, I'm gonna prove this adult wrong, but to like share your mind with the world is such a blessing that we have. I'm gonna kind of lump these last three questions into one. So the first one, how do you see your career in film playing out? What film schools are you applying to? Any films we should look forward to? So I'm someone who takes things one step at a time, because if I plan things out, then I disappoint myself. There's a beauty in not knowing, because one thing I do know is that I always just want to be making things. So my next step in my moment now is going to film school for college. I actually got accepted into 3 schools this week, so I'm like really excited about that. I got into Emerson, which is in Boston, Bard, which is in the Hudson Valley in New York, and the New School, which is in Manhattan in New York. I am excited to meet people, I'm excited to make things, I'm excited to live in a new place. And here's the thing with like it kind of playing into my career or whatnot. Everyone's like, you live in Los Angeles, why would you move out of Los Angeles if you want to be a filmmaker? And that's just always what I thought for so long. I'm like, am I doing myself a disservice by moving away? But no, because I can make movies from anywhere. You can make movies from anywhere. And a film to look forward to. I may have already posted it by now actually. I made a film called Tree Hugger that I just finished about trees who are looking for the meaning of life, stemming further from the scientific things that make something alive. That is my film Q&A. I hope it was helpful. If it was, let me know, or like ask more questions and I can make another video, or if you want more content about like how to get started in filmmaking. Like I said, I'm not really like a pro. If there's anything you want to know from me, just ask and I would be happy to share whatever wisdom I might have. Thank you for watching through this whole thing if you did. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy holidays to all you and all of your families and all of your loved ones. And yes, we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.